Hello, I'm John Lewis with TFB Global. In this video we will install a return fuel check valve in the return fuel line. This installation is intended for the Ford 6.4 liter Super Duty in F-Series commercial applications. The mock-up we're using shows installation technique. Please refer to the install data provided in the kit for actual installation pictures. Prior to beginning the installation, be sure that you've clearly identified the fuel return line, as many lines in the area look similar. You'll need to remove about 3 1/4 inches of the existing fuel tube in order to install the fuel check valve. A total of 7 inches of clear working tube will be necessary. Begin by marking 3 1/4 inches to be cut out. I'm going to go ahead and use a Sharpie marker, and I'm finding the center here. We've got a clear area of about 7 inches, 3 1/2 in the middle. I need my 3 1/4, which is 1 1/2. Let's see, 1 1/2 and 1/8, and 3 1/4. So here are my two cut marks, and that looks equal distance between the clamp stabilizing the fuel tube. Remember that the mock-up is typical. Once you've looked at the photos of an actual installation, you can see there'll be some slight variations, but again, this demonstrates technique in order to get the fuel tube modified. Since this installation speaks to an application with a 6.4 liter power stroke, we're going to make the assumption that you've also installed the Fuel Sentinel diesel pre-filter. There's probably not a truck on the road that is more in need of the Fuel Sentinel than the 6.4. And that said, in the Fuel Sentinel kit we do provide a mini tubing cutter as part of the installation equipment. So we're going to make the assumption that you're using the tubing cutter provided, or that you have one. When working on the 6.4, the forward portion of the fuel line, return line, should be easily removed with the fuel removing tool that most technicians will have. So once you get that piece of the line out, and again the photos show that, it's pretty easy to work with a tubing cutter to remove the section. It is a little tight on the frame rail. There's not enough room to get a tubing cutter in there without at least pulling the fuel tubes away from the frame. We do want to go ahead and deburr. Any type of deburring tool will work. Again, we've provided Q-tips. Go ahead and blow the line out, especially on the engine side of where the fuel check valve's going. Beyond that, a couple scraps of aluminum back to the tank is really not going to be the end of the world. So once we have, we've gone ahead and removed our 3 1/4 inch section, we're going to go ahead now and set up the rubber fuel coupling to go on the check valve. Okay, after we've removed the 3 1/4 inch section of fuel tube, we've deburred the ends, we've cleaned the lines. Now it's time to go ahead and install the check valve itself. It's important to note there is an arrow showing fuel flow. It is absolutely imperative that the arrow point towards the fuel tank on the return line. You've got a couple short lengths of 3/8 flex hose. You want to go ahead and install one piece on each end of the check valve. Go ahead and slip the clamp over, and we'll go ahead and secure the clamps, hose, and check valve at this time. Again, we spoke earlier in the video that the section of fuel tube between the supplemental check valve and the engine is a removable piece. So as we said earlier, once you've got that loose and removed, it aids significantly in getting the check valve in place. I'm sure you could leave the lines in position and work with it a bit, but anyway, for the purpose of the demonstration here, we've got the one line hanging a bit loose. We're starting to pre-tension one of the clamps on the fuel tank end, and slide one more on the engine side. And again, with the arrow facing towards the fuel tank, we'll go ahead and slide the check valve into position. And here's our other end. And you can go ahead and assuming that this is still attached to the other end of the other coupling, you want to go ahead and make sure you slip this far enough in where you're going to get a good clamp and seal, and that there's no binding induced during the installation. And we'll go ahead and tighten our worm clamp. Snug, not overly tight. Now remember that the check valve itself is guaranteed to have less than 1 pound across the valve itself, probably closer to 1/4 pound. So we're using single clamps in this situation, and some of you are probably wondering, well, we haven't got any kind of a bubble end on the fuel tube. We just haven't found it necessary. Once the 4 clamps are tight, there's just not any pressure that we need to be concerned with. You'll notice here that we've double clamped the fuel sentinel on the pickup side. That's to make sure we have an excellent seal, and again, it's suction only, and this is just to ensure that there's no air getting into the suction side. Here, single clamps seem to do the job just fine. That pretty much completes the installation of the supplemental check valve, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the reason for this particular valve when it's installed. What we're showing you here is the actual in-tank fuel pickup assembly used in the 6.4 liter. The little red neoprene flapper here at the end is the check valve that prevents reverse fuel flow in this particular installation. We have found that after a period of time in use, in as little as a year, that the neoprene relaxes significantly and it is actually open and will allow reverse fuel flow. Should the supply side of the 6.4 liter fuel system become restricted, once the engine is running, the transfer pump in the high pressure pump assembly is actually able to pull unfiltered fuel through what they call the check valve back up into the system. And just a few grains of contaminant will absolutely destroy the high pressure pump and fuel injection system. So for a very modest investment, we have a 100% positive fuel return check system, spring and ball seat assembly. There's absolutely no way that we're going to get any debris past our check valve. You've got 100% protection on the fuel system for reverse flow, and when used with the fuel sentinel, you've got a great water separator and a marvelous way of inspecting the for coarse contaminants in the fuel system as well as water.